By Kristen Lumen here. Trying to take it easy tonight. Wanted to do a not as long video. Try not to put too much thought into it. Just kind of go freestyle because I'm working out some stuff in my head, but it's kind of big and it's kind of like I don't know what all we can actually do with it at this point. But it is interesting and curious because it ties back to something that we were talking about prior to the July 15th thing. And I'm looking around, certain, looking in the Bible, looking at other texts, and then seeing like if it's an actual concept, in my opinion, based on years of working with her, then it would be somewhere in the Codex, which the Codex is mostly movies, mostly. Um, because she is what feeds the inspiration of the people to create this stuff. So that's where she puts her secret book. There's actually more truth in fiction than there is in what they claim to be truth. So, yeah, there were a couple instances of this idea showing up in the Codex, and the fact that it showed up twice in one of the movie series that's like literally at the very top of the Codex, which is The Matrix, that says a lot too. It actually it would explain some very interesting things. So when it comes to like this end of the age thing, like we can only go by like what what there is written, but we don't really know exactly. Now this cycle's happened many times before, regardless of what books we have or whatnot. It just seems like it's the same basic story, the same basic, sub ages. It's like, one age is like a soul class. That's kind of like the way that I see it. And then it culminates with a big, shebang at the very end. Then you graduate on to the next thing. Then it probably resets and a new soul class is formed. That's my guess. So you gotta kind with this channel, I talk about stuff and I don't know where it's coming from. Sometimes she's giving me clues, sometimes it's coming out naturally. But I've been thinking a whole lot lately about this whole what is divine power and how that connects to like what we would call nuclear power. And it's given me a lot to chew on. I did a couple videos and then Kenneth did kind of like a follow-up video. I think it was today. Um, maybe I'll put a clip of that in here. And it's got me wondering about some things. Very, very interesting. Uh, especially with the it's almost like when you get to this certain point, and according to what I've been able to find, like in scripture, it's the same point. It's the same point. It always has been, because it says right here it was First Corinthians 15:52. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So, so yeah, it's the same thing. Like what we've been covering lately. It's like that's when the harvest is at the last trumpet, at the end of the trumpet judgments. That's when the harvest comes. But what does that look like? Well, it appears to be that this divine energy that's within us becomes so strong for whatever reason. We don't know what. Maybe it's some external divine force that's being impressed upon us, that's charging us up like capacitors. And then we just basically explode out of our bodies. And I find that really, really interesting. Like I said, especially in light of some of the scenes in movies, because there's also the whole thing about Sophia. Like, we are part of this plan to bring down this place. And I could never quite understand like what role we play, because let's face it, you can't get three people to work together these days. Heck, you can hardly keep people's attention for more than a couple days. Like, how are we supposed to all work together? Well, you don't really have to, apparently. It's what it's looking like. It's like when it's time, if you've got that divine spark in you, that divine spark is going to be hypercharged, and you're just going to bust out. And we'll talk about how that relates to what Sophia was telling me, like back in May, before we even got on the doom train. She was talking about something that basically still ends up at the same point. Interesting. So anyway, I kind of made a different intro just to kind of demonstrate this. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
Help me!
The heat from the blast was in excess of 3,000 degrees Celsius. Any subjects within 12.5 yards were vaporized instantly.
No bomb parts found in a 3-mile radius of the Chinese theater.
No, sir.
Talk to me, Happy. What is a bomb, not a bomb?
Watch I say, watch I say, watch I say, what? Watch I say, watch I say, watch I say, what? Watch I say, watch I say, watch I say, what? Watch I say, watch I say, watch I say, what? Come like a bomb! Come like a bomb! Come like a bomb! Come like a bomb!
So let's go back and look at, what I've said in the past about this particular divine energy and how freaking strong it is. It's overwhelming. Like in the last couple of videos I talked about, if you encounter Christ, like he's like so powerful. He's this like walking nuclear energy. Like it's intense. I kind of equate it, like you ever see like in the military movies like Top Gun or something like that, and the jets are getting ready to take off the aircraft carrier and they're firing up the afterburners. Like imagine like trying to light a cigarette and sticking your face up to that jet engine to light it. Like that's what it feels like. It's nuts. It's nuts. Also, I've talked about how there were 2 days in the past where I let Lumen basically drive, like actually get in the driver's seat and take over. First thing she did is like I shot out of bed that morning and cleaned the house in like 15 minutes, like an hour's worth of cleaning in 15 minutes. Like I was dripping sweat. It was like boom, 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 boom. It was like a mix of like NZT from the movie Limitless and cocaine. Like my brain was just going a million miles a minute. All stuff I got to do. She's just doing it. And then about 3 hours later, all of a sudden it was just like I started power drain like really, really quick. And it's like it was almost like walking through, thigh deep snow trying to move. And finally I just collapsed and could barely move for like 2 days. Like I had to do a ton of vitamins and use my oils and all sorts of stuff. But basically, I just had to rest. Tried it again later, didn't even last that long. So I kind of determined like uh, Lumen kind of has to stay in the passenger seat. She can control the radio, which she's good at, but I have to drive because my body can't handle her. Uh, to be fully seated in my body, this body cannot handle that level of divine power. It just can't. And we can overlap our minds, but overlapping our bodies like that'll like blow me up. Maybe not blow you up, but what it does, it's like it sucks every nutrient out of your body. Like I had to just shovel minerals, mineral supplements down my throat. Like it's that freaking crazy. And I think that is partially why this is what was coming to me. Why the people that run the world like put poison in our food. I mean, have you ever like actually stopped and thought about that? Do they have to put poison in your food? Like if you just look at the ingredients for just about anything you buy at the grocery store, there's stuff in there that's poison. Everything. I mean, even if you get organic stuff, they spray poison on it. It's constant. And then you got, electronic poison, or Wi-Fi and stuff like that. And it's just to make our bodies not compatible with having that divine energy in there. Because I could tell you what it was like, especially that first day when Lumen and I were fully merged in the body. Like you feel like superhuman, super, like you have this super brain. It's freaking amazing. But you can't maintain it. You can't maintain it. And plus, as you get older, like I am, it gets even harder and harder and harder to do. But at the same time, I have kind of like this weird thing where she is so connected, and then I'm integrated with all the other parts too: Christ, Sophia, Lumen. Like I've gone through all the steps. So it's like her that divine energy is growing constantly to where like I can actually feel like I could sit here like this. It feels like there's a heat gun hitting my face and the energy coming out of my hands. It's so weird. Like that, the people that, the last few people that have bought pendants and things like that have been buying them for a while, they're like, they were strong before, but these last ones were freaking insane. I know. It's not only, I don't think I mean, a lot of it has to do with what I've done, but I don't think it's just that. I think everybody is being gradually turned up the volume, and that is shaking things loose. It's making things that are stuck or hidden kind of come loose so that you can deal with them. Everybody's energy is going up. And that takes us back to what I said earlier about what Sophia was saying back, I want to say it was like the beginning of May. I had a whole series of videos because she started, the images she was giving me was like almost like we're all, chickens in the eggs. And all these eggs were starting to crack. And she's like, it's almost time to start hatching the eggs. And then the metaphor uh, evolved a little bit to understand like, the world is our garment. And technically, it's like we are all also in the womb of Sophia, because that's what a matrix is. We think a matrix as like, this technological thing, but just ask ChatGPT or Google or whatever the word, what it means and what it's connected to. Even in the Bible, it basically means womb. I have to look that up again. I just remembered that it's in there, but I don't remember what it says. We're in the womb. We're about to be born. That's what she said. Um, Now, I had a couple things happened where I kind of went up a couple levels, but it still was not like the big thing is the big thing. And it was weird. Some of the I have to go back to those videos. Some of the metaphors she was using. She's like, it's gonna be real quick. It's like going down a water slide. Um, Once you start down a water slide, like there's no getting off halfway through. So there was a few days later, I realized there was a couple different references to what she said. One of which being like the birth canal, another being when Neo wakes up in the pod and they pop the cords off of him and he goes down that water slide. But it was going to be really, really quick. But I didn't really understand like what that was going to look like. Now, if you consider what we know about the world, external reality, the way it's described and the way she made me understand it through the Nagamani and things like that, when you're looking at exterior physical reality, you're looking at the inside of your egg. You're looking at the inside of your mind. And we all kind of overlap that. So when it talks about the sky cracking and the stars falling and all this stuff, yeah, that's kind of like that's the egg cracking. You're about to, but what happens down here is you basically just freaking explode out of your freaking body. And I think that is what kind of finishes off all the bad stuff that's left is if all the light people basically go nuclear. Some of this stuff, like we don't know. We don't know. I've had all sorts of weird things popping into my head. It makes me think like if nuclear energy is divine energy, like technically the same thing. It just keeps popping into my head the whole thing about splitting an atom. It's atom, just depends on how you spell it. Split atom, you got Adam and Eve. Split an atom, you got all this divine energy. Like, what if it is? It's kind of like in the movies and the comic books, the X-Men. They start messing around with nuclear bombs and stuff like that. They evolve. They get powers. It's how you got Godzilla. So maybe when they went through that whole stage messing around with nuclear bombs back around World War II, maybe that did something that sped it up because they haven't really dropped any since then. So if someone did use one coming up soon, whatever that does, like forget what you think you know or what they tell you, it probably does something like a nuclear bomb, and it's going to be very destructive. But it also is a perfect example of how the Lord is often described in the Bible or God. It's like a light that's no eye can look at. It's too bright. It's a consuming fire. It's it's nuclear power unleashed. Nuclear power is just kind of like the general term that we have to describe it, but that's what's in us. The whole time, I've been using those words, saying like this altar feels like a nuclear reactor. Nuclear, go nuclear. I mean, that's a ton of energy. It's a ton of energy, and I've experienced that. Like the one thing I've got uh, on video because we were able to get the security camera from the people across the street. Go back several years, and this would have been before Lumen, I believe. She would have been coming up, I think. It was before Lumen because I remember I was still doing a lot more magic. It was divine name magic, but still, I had so much negative energy in me, pain, um, uh, grief, guilt, like all sorts of stuff, and it was weighing me down. And I was coming up. I was trying to design a way to discharge it back to its source. That was my thinking at the time. So I used two of the 72 names in conjunction and focused on what I was trying to do, which was take all this negative energy that was in me and send it back because I hadn't yet quite gotten to that point of understanding like everything's my fault. It's always like there's someone else to blame. But I don't know if it was because I was like soaking in the bathtub because you're in water or whatever, but I had that sigil. I'm like, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I'm focusing on the sigil and just letting it soak into my consciousness about what I'm going to do. And I start hearing thunder getting closer, like a thunderstorm was all of a sudden rolling in. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this and send all this negative energy back. So then I scanned the 42 letter name circle 3 times. I scanned the names and then spoke them and intended to release it. And like literally that second, like the loudest bang ever, I about freaking relieved myself. Like it sounded and felt like lightning just hit my apartment. So I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Was I not supposed to do that? I was like, whoa, my heart was beating a million miles a minute. But I noticed like that energy was gone. Like all that negative stuff wasn't there anymore. So I tentatively went outside. It was still raining. I'm looking on the grass around. I got back. I looked up on the roof, looking for any kind of scorch marks or anything. Nothing, nothing. Then I get a phone call from my ex wife, who lives like a minute away by car. Guess what just happened? Lightning hit the tree in the front yard of where I used to live. So that's when I realized the lightning didn't hit my place. It left my place along with all that negative. And it was like, it's like you have a capacitor in you. Your divine spark is like a capacitor. And mine was so full up with negative energy. I discharged it and it went back to where I came from. So it, it freaking blew up that tree, killed it. They had to cut it down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I also blew out pretty much everybody's Wi Fi router in a 2 mile radius, including my own. Like it was nuts. So eventually she told me like that they got it on camera from the neighbor's security camera caught it. So this is me discharging my negative energy out of my divine spark.
Here comes the ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Here comes the ready or not. How you like me now? I say, here comes the boom, ready or not. Here comes the boys from the south. Boom, here comes the boom, ready or not. How you like me now?
Now, what's interesting is anybody that has seen that clip before, and I've talked about that, it's like when you look at that lightning bolt hitting that tree in slow motion, the energy, it looks like a mini nuclear bomb hit that tree. There's that word again. Because people see lightning and they just think electricity. I mean, it's a plasma discharge. And it has to do with what's in the air, the atmosphere, the ether. Ether used to be something that they taught in science, and then they just like, ooh, let's just not talk about this anymore. Stop talking about it. Ether has to do with the force. It has to do with Sophia. It has to do with a certain spectrum of color. A lot of stuff like that. Like we don't know how all this stuff works. We just know what they told us. Oh, like water molecules rub together in the sky and then they make plasma discharges. Can't prove that. I just have to take their word for it. But when stuff like that happens, it's pretty nuts. I don't know how many times like there's been crazy storms headed at me, and I know that the Benedict exorcism will is defense against storms. Plus at the plus at the time, there's a couple times I had tornadoes coming right at me. Plus I was using like the 4 archangels and stuff like that. I just go out there and do that with my will, and it's just like the freaking storm just falls apart or splits or goes around or something like that. It's like we have that much power. Like that divine God spark is powerful. I mean, there's been times when I did an experiment, like when I'd go over to my friend's house. It's like the super psychic that used to be the person that I took all my new stuff to test, because she would hold it and not I wouldn't she wouldn't look at any kind of labels. I wouldn't tell her what it was, and she would just feel the energy and be able to describe what it's doing, what it's interacting with, whether it did or did not have some sort of consciousness behind it, because she said some of these have a consciousness behind it. Well, that would be her. But I was walking out the door to her house one time, and I'm like, I'm just going to do an experiment. I just grabbed an empty roller bottle, kind of like these. Like this is like my current Sophia oil. And all I did was drop one little piece of selenite in it, one little piece of quartz, poured some of the oil in there, put the cap on it, and then I went like this. I put it in my hand and counted to 5. See, with my will, just charging it, and then I threw it in my bag. That's all I did to it. That's all I did to it. And then when I pulled that out at her house and had her hold it, she's like, this is just like it's not doing anything specific. It's just like super, super clean. It's like really, really, really clean energy, like clean light energy. It's like, what is this? I'm like, I made that in like 10 seconds because I just wanted to see what you would feel. Like, like we can do that kind of stuff. Anybody that's got that divine spark in them can do that kind of stuff. Like, but that lightning bolt thing, like that just shows how freaking powerful we are. And it's like sometimes we do stuff we don't even think about how or why we're doing it. We just do it. It's a bit like the stories that you hear. Somebody flips their car and their kid's trapped in it, and 120-pound woman just does what she's got to do, grabs the car and freaking lifts it, accessing that divine power. But through conditioning and teaching and poisoning our food and all that stuff, it's hard for us to connect to that power. But at the end of the age, regardless, I mean, they're doubling down on everything. They're pumping more poisons. They're trying. I mean, it's almost like they know, and they're just like trying to stop this from happening. And that's why they come up with freaking like vaccines with nanobots in it, crap like that. Like whatever they can do to shut it down, because they know like we're a bunch of ticking time bombs, like literally trying to shut it down. But the closer we get, it's like, yeah, our food's getting more poisonous. It's like you can't win. The air is poisonous. The freaking electromagnetic field, like we're just in this big poison freaking factory trying to keep us out of resonance with this power. But what happens when that higher power decides, I'm just going to go ahead and crank up the energy inside all these eggs? And then suddenly you become so charged that you literally blow out of your egg. Like that's kind of like what she's showing now. Like this is a factor in the end of this age. Like that's what it's gonna look like somehow. I almost wonder, like I was thinking, but I don't know if some people are gonna start popping off early, maybe. And that's gonna account for some of these things, some of these explosions. Um that brings me to I the future forecasting group put out their September remote viewing session, and there was something interesting about that. They didn't have a very good month. More than one of them was saying like they were having a really hard time getting details, getting focused. Like they weren't getting a whole bunch of new stuff. They did see, like, two of them saw something that looked something like some big, famous, ornate church being burned down, which made me think of some stuff. Dick talked about like there was going to be all these IEDs going off all over the United States. It's like when that stops, like when that starts, it's going to everything's going to take off. They can't stop it from that point on. But what if they're not IEDs? What if that's just how they're interpreting what they're seeing? Because in that intro, I had little clips in there from like Iron Man 3. Remember the plot of Iron Man 3? I know it wasn't the greatest Marvel movie, but it was all these people that had this stuff injected into them called extremis. And it made them like really powerful and really hot. But if they couldn't control that power, they exploded. And so they created a bad guy, a fictitious version of a bad guy, to take credit for it, to make it seem like these people exploding were actually like attacks when it was really just a cover story. So who's to say there isn't something like that coming? Like maybe those of us who are like at a higher charge, maybe we start popping off early. And it's like, oh, so and so bombed us. Oh, this happened. Like they got to explain this somehow. Is that possible? It's possible. Does it mean it's absolute? I don't know. It's just something that popped into my head. What if there is like I feel like we're going to get to this point where the energy starts steadily ramping up. And perhaps some of the people that are way further along start popping off early. And then at the last trumpet, everyone that hasn't popped off yet pops off. So all this stuff about, the world being destroyed by nukes and stuff like that, what if we are the nukes? That's what Kenneth was talking about in his video. What if we are the nukes? Because we have this nuclear power, divine light in us. Let me see what else was in here. Just interesting stuff to think about, at least. Yeah, so the remote viewers, they were both saying that they were all saying like they couldn't focus on much. And didn't I say like a couple weeks ago that the sidewalk, this is where the sidewalk ends, the breadcrumbs kind of drop off. And if the next thing, which this is just me saying it, but what happened like a week or so ago, and she said like that was the fifth seal. So the next thing would be the sixth seal. And she would probably, at a higher level, obfuscate anybody that can see, muddy the water, because it's got to come as a surprise. Doesn't matter what we think we know about what the script says, like the bad guys are going to do or is supposed to happen. Surprise means surprise. Now we have a general window to look at because it just started coming up again, which is the Julian calendar, August 29th, which is the Gregorian calendar, September 11th. Which, if they were ever going to do something on September 11th again, it would most certainly be this year, if they were. I mean, because that's I Pet Goat and everything all over again. But yeah, they did see some of the stuff. It was interesting. They did see, I think Naeem saw the bridge again, and he saw the bridge last month. And it's funny, that was in my video the other day when I was, future's so bright, you got to wear shades. One of those, that clip was from Terminator Genesis, the nuke going off that just knocked down the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge. So there's that again, just happened to work in there. Early May, Sophia said the eggs were ready to hatch. Yeah, so in Matrix 1 and 3, yeah, I covered most of the stuff that's in my notes. But the big thing was in Matrix 1 at the end, after Neo's resurrected and he jumped into Smith, he blows up Smith's body and emerges reborn. And then that happened with everybody at the end of Matrix 3. Neo let himself get pulled into, the Smith web or whatever. And then once he was in the Smith web, the Deus Ex Machina that was hooked into him surged him with power. And that's when we got that clip right there where he's got the cross lighting up. And what that did is it sent a surge through all the people and blew them all up. So, like, that was the interesting thing. Like I said at the beginning, like when these new ideas pop into my head, I'm like, if they have any merit, then they'll be in the codex somewhere. And there it was. That was probably the best example. Was the climatic finish of Matrix Revolutions, the third one, when all the Smiths are blown up. It makes me think, yeah, because maybe what that, like, all those Smiths started off as regular people in the Matrix, but they just got overtaken by this corrupted system. It's kind of like where we are right now. It's hard to free people, even when, like, I notice the analytics. I mean, this has been this way for a while. You can get people's attention for a short period of time, and then all of a sudden, it's just like drops by half or less. Now, is it because my videos suck? Is it because the algorithm isn't putting them out? What is it? Who knows? It's just something that I know. Like when you're dealing with truth, when you're dealing with Sophia, when you're putting out true information that's hidden, that's what happens. First of all, not that many people will see it. And secondly, not that many people can handle it. Not because they can't handle what they're saying, but the information and realizations might be a bit more than you're ready for because you got multiple veils on you that take a while to come off, to be able to see everything, to be able to understand it, to be able to grasp it. um, I mean, it's hard. So one thing I've always struggled with is like, how can I help all these people? And it's like, you just got to help the ones you can, the ones that make the effort to reach out to you. Like there's people I got to get back to. Like if you talk to me and you just caught me on a day where I was busy and I don't get back right away, I'm not going to be upset if you message me again. Just remind me, because I'm like one guy with a freaking angel in my head that's like constantly juggling a million things. So don't think like if we don't connect like immediately, please remind me. Please send another message. But anyway, that's all the notes that I had on that. Um, might want to check out Kenneth's video, which is this one here. Was really good. And then I'm just gonna kind of like shut my brain down after this. Like sometimes you got to stop thinking. If you stop thinking, like I'll use tactical distraction. Like I'll force myself to not to re-enter, not really re-enter the matrix, but do stuff that I normally wouldn't do, which is like watch a couple movies. I'll shut my brain off, not to put myself to sleep, but just to stop engaging everything, because my brain is always crunching the numbers. If I do that, if I take my attention off everything, I empty my cup, and then she will come in and show me the next big thing I need to look at. Right now, the biggest thing is, from looking at all this divine nuclear energy stuff, she's like, look, got all these pendants right now, and you do not need to focus so much on, except for like the one or two really specialty ones, like Aegis. Like I've got all these ones like this one. Like this one is just loaded with like special stuff, and this never looks good on camera with the lighting. kind of, this is like a big, like third eye, antenna booster type thing. It's like all I really have to worry about is programming these things to tune into and amplify that divine energy, both coming to you and coming through you. And then things will work itself out. It's not really my job to do every little thing, it's her job. So just getting in connection, getting people connected to her, amplifying that divine energy, because the more that divine energy amps up, the more it shakes loose the things that are like hanging on to you, like, biting your neck, like, I'm the monkey on your back. But it gets hard for that negative stuff to hold on to as that resonance builds. So just the act of amplifying the divine energy is going to shake things loose. She's like, just focus on that. And then take a day and don't do videos and just load a whole bunch of new stuff on the Etsy store. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Okay. So that's all we got for right now. If you like what we do, if you want to support our work, click on Buy Lumina Coffee, and we'll have another giveaway here soon. I got to ship a bunch of stuff. And our Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. I use that as my contact point because I will always get the notifications. Like if you contact the seller and sent me a message, I'll get that notification on my phone. It's not guaranteed that I'll get it any other way, like Gmail or anything like that. Just so many notifications. And I'm not just going to put my phone number out there because anytime I put like personal contact stuff, some crazy Christian that's part of the matrix will start spamming me with stuff. It's sad, but that's what they do. So that's the best way is contact us through there with any questions. Anything that if you want me to address anything specific in a video, um, leave a comment, but notate in the comment like, please address this, and then I'll put those all aside. Okay, well, that's all we got for now. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.